Washington State has the third highest homeless population in all of the land. I am so proud, so proud. We spend literally billions of dollars, and where does this get us? More homelessness. California, same exact thing. Portland, same exact thing. The more money we spend, build it, and they will come. It's exactly what's going on. We got a new report out. You know what it ignores? It ignores drug addiction, and it ignores mental health issues. Two of the most important components of homelessness. But what they want to blame it on is lack of affordable housing. That's just absolute nonsense. Let's get into it. Here we go.
Now at 6, Washington State's homelessness rate continues to rise and is now among the highest in the country. This is according to a new study just released today by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Yeah, the surge comes despite the fact that billions of dollars have been spent in the past decade to reduce the trend. Como senior reporter Chris Daniels has looked through the lengthy report and talked to experts. He now joins us live with more tonight. Chris?
Yeah, Hannah, some good news. The number of homeless veterans across the country has dropped. And in Washington State, the number of homeless youths are also on the decline. But otherwise, every metric is pointed in the wrong direction. On a dreary day.
So with the exception of a couple of cherry-picked little segments, that one's down, that one's down. The rest are all just to the moon. Shocker, right?
When tents don't dot the landscape like years before, Sarah Rankin says the visuals don't paint a full picture.
But the bulk of the iceberg is not visible to folks.
The Seattle U professor is the founder and director of the Homeless Rights Advocacy Project.
We know that the single most reliable predictor of homelessness is the cost of housing.
Bull. That is nonsense. That is 100% nonsense.
And we've been suffering from a major housing affordability crisis
No, you've been suffering from a major fentanyl crisis. You've been suffering from a major fentanyl crisis because you know what? There's a lot of other areas in the country that have had big increases in pricing, and yet their homelessness hasn't gone to the moon. Whereas here in Seattle, where we just let people live wherever they want, whether they're mentally insane or not, whether they're addicted to a whole bunch of drugs or not, we let them live wherever. And we've gotten a reputation. King County, Washington State has gotten a reputation for, hey, if you're homeless and you're getting hassled in your hometown, get that one-way bus ticket to Seattle. They'll take care of you. Freeattle for all.
Washington and throughout the country. So the spigot is constantly turning up.
The HUD annual assessment now estimates there are more than 771,000 homeless people in America on a given night, up 18% in a year, and Washington has a higher percentage than most states. According to HUD, that's because there's been a 35% increase in Washington State of people experiencing homelessness since 2007. And while there has been success with reducing youth homelessness, Washington State is number one in the largest change in chronic homelessness of any state in the country, up almost 56% in a year and 360% since 2007, according to HUD. And that's after billions of dollars have been spent here to build out housing, services, and treatment, and the creation of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority that infrequently updates its own website since naming a new CEO in August.
How has there been a good return on the investment?
What we know is that there are more people entering homelessness for the first time than ever.
Why is that? A lot of folks, what happens when you're trying to live in a super expensive North American city like Seattle, what do? You move somewhere else where you can get basically a lateral job move, still get that same job, but your cost of living decreases substantially. That's what you do. Not everybody should be able to live in Seattle. It's an expensive city. You come to Seattle and you just look around, you look at housing prices, you look at gas prices, you look at food prices, you look at, Starbucks prices. Everything is expensive here. And I know that because I go to areas like Oklahoma City, where my parents are, where everything is cheaper. Everything is cheaper. So if you want to make that responsible decision, you go live in an area where it's cheaper. But what is happening is people are coming to Seattle because of the drug culture, because of the free stuff to be a drug addict on the streets in a tent. But these advocates, they want to point it out, we've got a lack of affordable housing. That is absolute nonsense. Nonsense.
Rankin suggests there has been progress here too, noting the numbers involving veterans and youth, but says there will be no quick fix for an issue now more than a decade in the making. Of course, we have heard many voices in King County in particular that believe that this is a fentanyl and addiction crisis that has complicated homelessness across not only this county, but throughout the state. Rankin says that she believes there will be more detail in a new state report from the State Department of Commerce that will be released in January, which will highlight some of the strengths and weaknesses right now in the current system in Washington State. For now, live in Seattle, I'm Chris Daniels, KOMO News.
Earlier this year, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority released the results of its biannual point-in-time count. It found on any given night there are 16,385 people experiencing homelessness within the county. That's an increase of 23% from the 2022 count. Of that overall total, about 9,800 people were considered unsheltered. The count was conducted over a 12-day period in late January and early February.
So that was King County. King County up 23%. We just keep spending more and more tax dollars on this issue. And guess what? So much of that money is spent on just ridiculous stuff that's completely unnecessary. And you spend it on, housing first, which is low barrier entry housing facilities for homeless folks. Just let the drug addicts and the mentally insane go live in their own place. I'm sure it'll work out. And then people are shocked when the units get absolutely trashed, when people OD. I mean, these people, they need to be in treatment. Whether it's mental health care treatment or addiction treatment, they need to be in treatment. But we're just not doing that. Hey, let's take a look at some photos. Let's have an ADD moment, or ADHD, I guess it is. We'll look at some of these photos, see if we can see where they are. That's nice. That's a good looking shopping cart there. Yeah, that's tasty. You want to live in that tent? I mean, this is, look at this wheelbarrow. Hey, what are you doing with the wheelbarrow? Well, I got to haul the stolen goods back and forth with something, right? Look at that. Oh, that's We Heart Seattle. That's just horrific. Man, that's some gnarly stuff. Oh, yeah, there we go. All right. And people decorate their tents, decorate their flies. What is on top of that tent? No, that's part of the graffiti in the background. You just can't tell with the graffiti and the tents, right? There we are. Just a standard Seattle park. I mean, bring your dog down to the park. Watch out for the human feces. Watch out for the needles. And if you're having a cross-country race, maybe don't, because you've got sex offenders running around that, they tend to find the young teenage girls attractive. Shocking, right? There we go. This was on, not on Mercer Street, but super close to it. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is right off to the left here, I believe. I did a walk by on a way to an Iron Maiden concert not that long ago. No, was it not Maiden? Nope, it wasn't Maiden. Who was it? Can't remember. Senior moment. But let's get down to, all right. So those stories from HUD those statistics are just nonsense. And the people reporting on that are just absolutely, head up their ass, because they're ignoring, like Jason Rant here says, HUD homelessness report, an absolute joke, by ignoring drugs and mental health. It's a housing problem. Just don't have enough housing. Well, then they can go beg, for more housing, and you never really get to the root of the issue, which is you got a bunch of addicts and you've got a bunch of people running around that shouldn't be there, because they should either be in an insane asylum or they need to be in treatment. So we already talked about kind of the results of the study. HUD is dishonest with the cause of homelessness. This is what Jason writes. HUD blames homelessness primarily in the country's worsening national affordable housing crisis, rising inflation, stagnating wages among middle and income households, and the persistent effects of systemic racism. I'm sorry, that is nonsense. That is total nonsense. It adds that illegal immigration and displacement from natural disasters made the data worse. When I first read this story, I'm like, what planet are you reporting from that you don't know what the real story is? You're going to blame illegals? I mean, a lot of these items, yes, they are Joe Biden's America, right? They are absolute Joe Biden's America. But you can't blame those on homelessness going through the roof. Left-wing media will focus on the affordable housing crisis because it most aligns with their political agenda. They spent the entire presidential campaign telling viewers and readers and listeners that inflation was down, wages were up, and the economy was thriving. They couldn't figure out why anybody would think otherwise, because they're not listening to most Americans who are saying, hey, I'm having a hard time paying the gas prices. I'm having a hard time paying the grocery prices. I'm having a hard time paying for anything. And I'm not making more money, I'm making less. That's what Democrats just completely blew off. I don't understand it, why we didn't do as well in the election as we thought we would. While they'll pick up the numbers from natural disasters because it feeds into their climate change hysteria, they'll ignore the data about illegal immigration because it might strengthen the American people's view on strengthening security at the border. Oh, we don't want that, do we? Somehow, however, the HUD report completely missed addiction, whether to alcohol, opioids, meth, or another substance, as a major driver of homelessness. Mental health crises often compound the issue. Yet HUD couldn't be bothered to offer even a passing reference to these issues. Somebody up top is saying, I don't correlate the two, because if we don't, then we can just ignore it and homeless industrial complex will just keep begging for more housing. If we could just build some more homes, we'll fix this issue. Nah, you got a bunch of nut jobs doing drugs and they're causing these numbers to skyrocket because you're making it easier for them to live this lifestyle than you are pushing back. Because you go to areas where they're pushing back, guess what? They don't have these massive spikes of people just living on the sidewalk trying to, literally last week, one of my quotes was, the homeless person was trying to reclaim public spaces with their tent. They thought that they had a right to pitch their tent, not figuratively, literally, wherever they want in public spaces. The agency's refusal to name these factors, along with a media environment that won't call this out. Even Cairo, how far do we have to, or Como, how far did we have to get in that segment before we heard, you know what, there's some detractors who think that maybe there's a correlation. Fentanyl, drug use, and people being insane. I mean, we had another stabbing, 12th Avenue or South 12th Street and South Jackson and 12th Avenue South. We had yet another stabbing there yesterday. We've just got stabbings all over. I think we need to take away everybody's kitchen knives. I really do. Butcher knives, I think we need to get rid of knives. We've got a stabbing epidemic. It's got to be all the knives just jumping up and stabbing people, right? Right? I'm joking. I'm making absolute fun of, taking away people's guns because, it's a gun crisis. No, we got a stabbing crisis. Is it a knife crisis? No, you got Looney Tune people doing drugs going around, So, demonstrates either willful ignorance or a desire to appease progressive activists who push housing first and harm reduction, two of my favorite policies to hate on. Housing first. Just get them into housing and it'll stabilize them. No, get them off drugs and get them on some medication for whatever mental issues they've got going on. That will stabilize them. Give them temporary housing in the meantime in the form of treatment. Oh, I can't do that, Sean. I involuntarily putting people in those places. Good Lord. You're some kind of Nazi. And harm reduction policies. Harm reduction being all harm, no reduction. You want a clean needle? Here you go. Yeah. Devoid of accountability or treatment requirements. Situation on the ground in America's most liberal cities lays bare the crisis. Consider King County, with a 2024 PIT count, found 63% of unsheltered homeless reported a substance use disorder, mental health issue, or both. So this is a legit study, right? This is the point in time count. Hey, you got any problems with drugs? No. And all of a sudden he's screaming at the clouds going by, right? I mean, how often do we see this? So in the pit count, 63% said, I'm using too many drugs, or I got some kind of mental issue, or both. Way over half. And yet we're gonna blame Washington State's increase in homelessness on lack of affordable housing. I mean, it's literally just people, don't bring that up, because if we do, man, then we got to go a whole nother direction. We can't just build all this housing. We got to actually get people into some treatment, whether it's for, opioids or whatnot. We got to actually get people some actual care instead of just, here's your keys, go live in that little tiny home. It explains why the county has seen a historic rise in fatal drug overdoses in the last several years, because you got people abusing drugs, and you got a wide open southern border that's just, it's like the Chicago and Seahawks game. Not even a single touchdown was made, right? It's just such bad football. It's like the border. It's just not even a border. Not really football. When you've got millions of people just rushing across the border with drugs, bringing them into the United States, and then some of it, is dosed a little too high and it kills people, like my son. And while even the county admits that these numbers underrepresent how bad the crisis really is, they still pretend that homelessness is an outcome of structural racism and racial inequities. That is such nonsense. People should be ashamed of bringing that up as a cause. These people are drug addicts. These people have trauma in their life somewhere. They're abusing drugs. That's not systemic racism. They've got probably some kind of predisposition towards addiction, and then they had some kind of traumatic event happen to them, probably in their childhood, and now they are self-medicating to try and get themselves off, and it's not going well. So, article goes on to say, it's true that these drug-addicted and or mentally ill homeless people struggle with housing affordability. Well, when you can't hold down a job, you're going to have inherently a very difficult time affording to make rent, right? That's why you're seeing homelessness spike. Because these people, they can't hold down a job. They get into these drugs, they get into fentanyl, no can do. An honest assessment, however, would note that they can't afford a home because they're addicted to drugs and or alcohol and or mentally ill, rather than being an addict or mentally ill because they can't afford a home. So nobody wants to ever point that out. Hey, yeah, if they could afford a home, would their addiction go away? If they could afford a home, would their mental health care issues, would those go away? Hey, here's your house. We proved that time and time and time again. Here's the keys to your home. Somebody gets the new tiny home. They go in there, and because they don't have people around to wake them up, give them a little Narcan, they overdose. And that's part of the reason we've got these, numbers spiking. When reviewing the number of unsheltered homeless reporting a substance use disorder, mental health issue, or both, they're similarly dire in San Francisco and Los Angeles counties, 51%. So you got 61% and 51%. And these are reports where people are going out into the field and saying, hey, do you have an addiction problem? Yep, I do. So how many of these people are just flat out lying for whatever reason? Most of them. I would bet if you came back, if you interviewed all the people in the homeless encampments and all the people out there running around, you'd be up closer to 90% with either a mental health issue, substantial, or addiction issues. 90%. 90%. That would be my guess. 9 out of 10 have some kind of issue along those lines. And people never want to talk about that. They want to talk about that 1%. Well, they're just trying to get back on their feet. Yes, they are. But everybody else, the other 9 out of 10, the other 900 out of 1,000, they just want to roam around and do their drugs and, just hang out with their buddies and not be in treatment and not be in, some kind of communal shelter care system, because you can't do drugs there. So they don't want to be there. So this whole housing first thing, this whole harm reduction thing, simply doesn't work. These counties virtually mirror the homelessness prevention strategies favored by the radical left that are used in King County. Housing first, and harm reduction. All harm, no reduction. There's no data to show either approaches have meaningfully worked to address homelessness. In fact, homelessness has gone to the moon, right? I mean, we just incrementally keep going up, and we look around and go, God, well, let's blame the cost of affordable housing. Not everybody can afford to live in some of North America's most expensive cities. Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, BC, that's Canada, international, but it's just up the road, right? LA, San Francisco. All of those cities that I just mentioned have homelessness that has just gotten wildly out of control. And it's because build it and they will come. Seattle is known as Freeattle within the homeless community because you give out everything for free. Why wouldn't you come here and be homeless? It's ideal. You got weather that's, it's a little soggy, but you can get by. You know, you don't have 110-degree days. You got maybe one or two of those. Yeah, you got one every 5 years. And then you got some 85-degree days where everybody gets out their air conditioning unit. I got to set this thing up. Now you got moderate climate, and you got politicians who are so unwilling to look at the actual causes of what's going on that they want to blame housing prices. Housing prices. Yeah, these people didn't have jobs yesterday, lost their rent. No, these people have been on a downward spiral for oftentimes years and years and years. And then finally they get the tough love from the family and they boot them out. And then they end up on the streets, and then they end up in a pit report. Yeah, I'm doing some fetty and got some real substantial mental issues because I've been doing the fetty and I've been doing the other drugs for so long that my mind is literally blown out. But yeah, you don't hear about that on the studies, do you? No. Yeah. Because that would require actually looking at reality, something that the media do. Oh, don't talk about that, Sean. Don't go there, because then, cat's out of the bag. Billions of dollars are spending on homelessness. I don't really know where it's going and don't really know what it's doing. But hey, let's keep spending because, you need 18 different vice presidents of the homeless directive, all making a couple $100,000 a year. They're sitting around just trading paper. Good Lord, I hope they don't catch on that homelessness isn't going down with the billions they're spending. It's actually going up. Don't talk about that. It's what we're doing. Just ignore and it'll go away. Yeah, just keep focusing on harm reduction and housing first. How's that working out for you? Not that well. All right. Just for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.